Mexico City to a loving and caring family. When I was 9, my family made the difficult decision to come to the US in search of jobs, opportunities, and a better life for me and my sister. I can't help but admire my parents. I thank them and feel proud to have them by my side. They are some of the most giving individuals I know. As a kid, after having volunteered at the zoo, for 1 year I was asked for my social security number, and I remember feeling broken, trying to comprehend my situation. However, my mother refused to have this affect me and immediately contacted organizations to advocate for me. It was then that I saw how committed my parents were to make my life as an undocumented kid as seamless as possible. However, through college, I was once again constantly reminded of what it meant to be undocumented. It was specifically difficult being away and not being able to speak to my father for weeks at a time, trying to call him to talk to him and tell him about what I had just learned in my genetics class, and being unable to reach him as he was working his 3rd shift that night. This I came to accept, as I was determined to reciprocate their dedication. How could I not? When I was in high school, my grandparents became ill, and I watched my parents struggle as they made the heart-wrenching decision to remain in the US, fearing that if they were to go back, they would jeopardize their children's opportunity for a better future. Back then, my father had applied to change his status, and one of the conditions was that he could not leave the country. We felt helpless. We tried to remain in contact through the phone as much as we could, and despite my grandparents' reassurances, I could not help but miss them. The last few times we were able to speak to my grandparents, our conversations had become limited. My grandmother had become unable to have full conversations, and my grandfather had been progressively losing his hearing. I craved seeing their smiles. I was angry that I couldn't be in the same room with them. All I can remember about the night my grandmother passed away is standing in the hallway outside my parents' bedroom as my mother spoke to my grandmother on the phone, telling her how much she loved her. That night, I was shaken by our reality. For the first time, I understood what it meant to be powerless. What it meant to love your children and be willing to sacrifice for them, and what it meant to be undocumented. It was also the first time I became acquainted with feelings of helplessness and frustration. I've often wondered if our sacrifices have been worth it. Regardless of my parents' sacrifices, regardless of my trying to prove myself worthy of a chance, I find myself in the same situation. Unemployed, unable to help my parents financially, unable to apply to med school, unable to travel without worrying if I will be having to make a call or receive a call from my loved one from a detention center. At the moment I can only dream of the day I will be able to graduate from med school, the day I will be able to travel without fear of being separated from my family for 10 years, the day I will be able to boat, the day I will be able to visit my grandparents' resting place and thank them for their understanding. It has been 2 years, 10 months since I have graduated from college, and my dream was put on hold due to my status. Unlike my peers, graduating did not mean the beginning of a career. It did not mean I was free to travel or explore what the world had to offer. To me, graduation only served as a reminder of my limitations. Never before had I been so confronted by the limitations in the days following graduation. I no longer had anything to look forward to. My biggest fear was having to accept my circumstances and having to give up my aspirations. During this time, I have gone through many emotional roller coasters. It wasn't until the rejection of the DREAM Act 15 months ago that I finally came to realize that I could no longer sit and wait for politicians to do the right thing. I could no longer be a spectator. I refused to be marginalized or have my parents plead guilty. To me, the only criminal is the system, and those that support it are guilty. Today, I joined thousands of immigrants around the country, claiming the right for a fair and just opportunity to integrate and be recognized as part of this society. I define myself. My name is Shanat. I'm undocumented, unafraid, and unapologetic.
Hi, my name is Yaxad. When I was 4, I immigrated to the U.S. along with my sister and my mom, not really knowing why we were leaving our home in Mexico. I just knew that I was finally going to be reunited with my dad. At that moment, all I wanted to do was remember the way he looked. I wanted him to carry me in his arms. And most importantly, I desperately wanted my family to be together again. It did not take me long to consider Chicago as my new home. But as I got older, I began to realize that I was 9 digits away from even beginning to consider a piece of the American dream. The worst reminder came the night my dad called to tell me that my mom had been pulled over. Knowing that she did not have a driver's license, I tried to prepare myself mentally for how our lives would change. Would I stay or go back with her? I felt helpless while I waited at the footsteps of my school. I couldn't even reach out to my teacher, who was sitting a few feet from me, because he had no idea I was undocumented. Every minute that went by, I felt myself becoming paralyzed with hopelessness. With a matter of seconds, I had gone from being a 14-year-old waiting to be picked up from school to a 14-year-old having to make a painstaking decision. In those long hours, as I waited to hear back about my mom, I made up my mind. I would leave the home I had grown to love if my mom was forced to leave it. I should not have had to decide between my mom and my home. In fact, no child should have to decide between their parent and their home. Yet thousands of kids have to feel the pain every single day because of racist, abusive, and dehumanizing laws. So I stand here today because I don't want anybody to feel like they don't have a voice. I know what that feels like. I will not let my struggles, my dreams, and my existence be pushed aside or used in the name of politics. My life is not a political token. As a human being, I have a right to be happy. We all do. I invite you to stand up and fight with me for the justice we deserve. The government can attempt to take away our rights, but it cannot take away our will to fight. I am not backing down. I define myself. My name is Yaxad. I'm undocumented, unafraid, and unapologetic. Thank you.
My name is Manuel Cordova. I am undocumented. Growing up in Mexico, all I remember were my parents arguing. One day, my mother took me upstairs hoping to shield me from the violence, but I heard everything. She could not hide the bruises all over her face that I saw the day after. She could not take it anymore. She told me that we were going on a trip. Without me knowing, she took me to the United States hoping to provide us with a better life. In the United States, the challenges never ended. My mom had to work 12-hour shifts and I barely got to see her. Despite this harsh reality, we were all thankful we had each other. One summer before my first semester at UIC, I was driving to my girlfriend's house. Suddenly, I heard the dreaded sound of the police pulling me over. For the first time in my life, I felt helpless. As my heart raced, thoughts began to bombard my mind. What would happen to me? Would I be deported? Who would honor all the sacrifices of my mother? Thankfully, the only cost that came was out of my mother's pocket, but the fear still lingered. During my first semester at UIC, I witnessed my first protest. All my life, I had been told to hide my status and to be ashamed of myself. Instead, these students were willing to sacrifice everything so that students like me could have a future, so that we could have a chance at life. I knew I had to take part in the movement. I would no longer live in the shadows. Instead, I was ready to fight. I look forward to the day where I can finally be able to apply in medical school, where I can finally drive my girlfriend to school rather than always having to rely on her, where I can freely travel the world and for the first time visit my family in Mexico, so that in the future I can serve as a doctor saving lives. I know that the struggles ahead are only going to continue to get worse, but I will not give up. I will continue to fight for my education, my family, my community, and for my rights as a human being. I define myself. My name is Manuel Cordova. I am undocumented, unafraid, and unapologetic.
My name is David. About 5 years ago, I was in my wife Fanny's apartment hallway, and she shared with me that she's undocumented. I shrugged my shoulders and started asking about the actual journey, just like I did with my parents. It didn't seem to be a big deal at the time. I don't remember ever fearing my parents' deportation, the police, or ICE. I guess you could say I was sheltered from this reality. I'm an Army soldier, and I'm proud of the work that I've done. I remember calling Fanny while I was gone. I called anxious to find out about her day, really just to hear her voice. One particular day, she had just found out that she got a scholarship for graduate school. I congratulated her, let her know how happy I was. I didn't say what we already knew, that I would once again find her asleep at her desk at 3 a.m. studying for midterms or finals. And for what? What was the point? She can't work anyways. It meant she would have been deported while driving to school, and I wouldn't be able to help. This last September, I came home from Afghanistan. And just like the first time, I served my country to the best of my ability, setting my family and my friends aside. During the 10 months I was gone, my country deported over 300,000 human beings. My wife could have been one of them. To think that the country that I fought overseas for could also take my wife away while I was gone is ridiculous. The same country that could have deported my family while I was gone. My wife shouldn't have to worry about being deported before I get home, if I get home. I shouldn't have to worry about my own government taking her away from me. So many people believe that this is no longer an issue since we're married. I guess it's easy to believe that, especially since I'm a veteran. But every day I get home from work and face the fact that she may not make it home. I picture her being stopped on the way home from school, put on a bus, and being sent back to Mexico. It isn't until she comes through that door that I feel some relief, at least until the next day. I can't plan a vacation for us. She's not allowed to fly overseas. My wife wants to work. She wants to help us with money, but she isn't allowed to. We're scared to start a family. She could be taken away from us at any moment for anything. What else do we have to go through to prove that we're worthy of a normal life? The fact is, this immigration system is broken. So broken that our love is at no less risk than any other undocumented love. We need to improve ourselves now more than ever, as well as the world around us. That's why I want as many people to find out what's going on, to be aware of this travesty, and to realize that we're not alone. We're not the only couple that's going through this. My name is David, and I'm an ally.
My name is Fanny. I'm undocumented. I'm a graduate student and I'm an Army wife. Every time I talk to people who don't understand how the immigration system works, I get the same response. You are married to a US citizen who is an Army reservist. You have nothing to worry about. You should be able to fix your papers in no time. Unfortunately, that's not my reality. David and I have been married for 4 years, and every time that I try to adjust my status, we are told that I should wait until the agreement gets passed because we cannot prove enough hardship to stay in the US. I cannot understand why a military family has to go through this struggle. No one talks about what it means to be an undocumented military spouse. Before my husband's deployment, I went to a family event. They prepare us for the hard transition, but nobody in the Army addressed how my undocumented status would lead me to feel disconnected, different, and isolated. Did any of the Army officers know that every time I heard the word deployment, fear and frustration were killing me inside? Maybe. But they didn't understand my fear of being deported because that meant that I might not be here when David got home. As an Army wife, I gave a service to this country through each phone call, text message, Skype session, and letter. I made sure to provide my soldier with the love and support that he needed. Now that he's home, I feel like the last thing I deserve is to live with him without fear. I think that going through a deployment is more than enough hardship. If this government really values military families, they must do something to ensure the well-being of my family. My husband needs me now just as much as he needed me while he was deployed. I'm a college graduate, and I will get my master's degree soon, but I can't get a job. I can't even help my husband pay for groceries, for rent, for gas, for other expenses. I feel helpless. I don't want to be a burden. I want to feel independent and capable of providing for my family. But I'm strong, and I will keep fighting until politicians stop playing games with my life. If they keep saying that I'm a criminal in this society, I will continue to prove them wrong. I'm a valuable human being, Army wife, and graduate student. I define myself. My name is Fanny. I'm undocumented, unafraid, and unapologetic. We define ourselves. We are an undocumented family.
We're unafraid and unapologetic.
My first and last name are somewhat common, and I think my story might be true, which is why I'm telling it today, to show how tough it can be. My name is Jose Alberto Martinez, and I am more than just a word, which is why I'm taking so long to say this one thing and tell you my story. I do not want to be purely written off into some stereotypical type and then be limited by it. I was born in Mexico City, or Distrito Federal de Mexico, and I am undocumented, but that's not all I am. I want to be a researcher, to one day get my PhD and get a science position somewhere. But despite my hard work, I find my efforts impeded by that single word, undocumented. I first had to encounter the difficulties of my status when I attended Whitney Young High School. Before graduation, I had hoped that things could change, and that for now, it was a distant problem. But when there was a week to go until we had to travel for academic decathlon, even though I was excited about the prospects of it, I was still secretly also filled with dread, not knowing what could happen at the airport. My coach was the only one who knew I was undocumented. I went with some nervousness that I was able to somehow hide from the rest of my teammates. Many of them still don't know. Going through this once did not make this easier. Senior year, when we went to nationals again, I was refilled with anxiousness. Now 18, an adult. One of my teammates thought I was afraid of flying, not knowing that I wasn't afraid of flying, but of being deported, and of my dreams ending there. My aunt died nearly 2 weeks ago, and she was buried in Michoacán, Mexico. It reminded me of my great-grandmother's death, and how then, as now, I could not visit their burials. I feel disconnected from those realities, sad and frustrated by their unfairness. And it is experiences like this that reaffirm the injustice of our current immigration system. I speak to you today, despite my fears and doubts. We should not live in fear of the everyday. I know we're facing a tough time in our country, and that during these times, politicians find it enticing to use immigrants as scapegoats. Which is why I stand here today and tell you that we, the undocumented and our allies, do have a voice. Let us not forget the principles of freedom upon which this country was built, and let us not revert to old angers and fears. Let me tell you that whatever you call me, I'm not only Mexican or undocumented, but also an American, just like you. My name is Jose, and I define myself. I'm undocumented, unafraid, and unapologetic.
My name is Jocelyn. I graduated with honors from middle school. I was a cross-country and track runner in high school. I am now in college and getting a degree in psychology. But it wasn't like this about 9 years ago. I was in 5th grade. I had all my friends, my family, a puppy, and my life made in Mexico. I could not imagine leaving that behind. I came to this country when I was 11. I wasn't sure why. I remember having a mix of emotions while walking through the desert at night. When we ran out of food and water, I was worried about my little brother. He was only 3 years old, hungry, thirsty, tired from walking miles and miles on end in the blazing sun. I was scared. He was scared, but I didn't want to show it. I kept telling him that every time and everything would be okay. I remember me begging him to not cry and hold it in fear of getting caught. One night, as we came close, we heard people yelling. We saw bright lights and ran as fast as we could to hide. My heart was racing. I jumped over a bush. I scraped my hands and knees. They were bleeding, but I didn't care. I just wanted to be safe. As I hid, I saw a mother being taken away from her little kid by an officer. I remember her screams, her crying out to her son, her holding on to that little boy's hand so tight, and her perseverance to stay with him, which only reminded me more of my brother and how I didn't want to lose him. As much as I wanted to help them, I felt helpless. I didn't want to be separated from my family, not then and not now. Coming to this country was a challenge, and I soon realized that living here would be one too. When I started middle school, I was scared of not fitting in, of being picked on for being the new kid and not knowing their language. I found myself confused every day by people that would talk or yell at me in a different language, as if their screams would make me understand what they were saying. Sometimes I thought I was in trouble. The only trouble was that I couldn't communicate with them and tell them I wasn't dumb. Tell them that I only needed time to learn and adapt. But it wasn't until high school when I realized what being undocumented implied. I was angry with my parents for bringing me here when I never asked them to. But now I don't blame them. They only wanted better and more opportunities for us. And even though there will be more challenges ahead, I know I'll get through them just as I have before. I define myself. My name is Jocelyn. I'm undocumented, unafraid, and apologetic.
I was only 9 years old. I remember holding my tears when I was saying bye to my brother as I was getting ready to board the plane to the US. I remember thinking that we were only coming for 2 months. But little did I know, I was going to become that kid who was made fun of at school for not speaking English. I am that child who was sent to the corner in the classroom to read a random book in Spanish while the other students participated in class. I can't even remember the name of the book because all that was in my head was that I wanted to be part of that group. I am that kid who saw his dad feeling helpless when Grandpa died, and we couldn't go see him one last time because if we left the country, it would be almost impossible to come back. I remember seeing him trying to hide his sadness, working night shifts, and going to school during the day, pursuing that better life for his family. I am that high school student whose biggest obstacle when filling out a college application was that special 9-digit number, and who didn't understand why he couldn't get financial aid for college like the rest of his classmates. I am that young adult who, when he gets in his car to go to school, work, or simply to just go buy groceries, his hands begin to get sweaty, his legs start shaking. I remember when I got pulled over, I didn't have a license. The officer didn't believe it was me in my school ID. I was taken down for booking. As they took my picture and fingerprints, I thought to myself, I'm screwed, I'm getting deported, and couldn't believe it was only for a wrong left turn. Luckily, I didn't get deported, but I still remember this every time I'm behind the wheel. I'm that young adult who strives daily to continue his education, applying for as many scholarships as he can, hoping to get them, and working 2 jobs with the fear of losing them because of not having a social security number. I am a good student. I am a good son. I am a good brother. I am a good friend. I am a good human being. I am that person that, like all of us here, deserves to pursue his dreams. I define myself. My name is Hugo Dominguez. I am undocumented, unafraid, and unapologetic.
and I am from the suburbs, and I'm here to tell you guys all that aside from this rally, there's going to be a rally in DuPage County where for the first time Undocumented youth will speak about their stories just as they did today. And it's on March the 16th at 4 p.m. in Wheaton, Illinois. So we have small flyers with people that are giving them around. So if you're interested, please attend that. It's next Friday. And also on Saturday the 17th at